This little girl dies, meets her sister, Reggie, on the other side, comes back and shares with her parents that she met Reggie, and they leave the room. They freak out because Reggie had died of accidental poisoning when she was like 2, before this little girl was ever born.
Wow.
That not every near-death experience is as deep as others.
Why do you think it's always lineage?
Because family matters to God. I interviewed this atheist. He was an art professor who was doing a tour with students in Europe, in France, and his lower duodenum ruptured. You usually have like 5 to 6 hours before you're dead. And it was a weekend, so they couldn't find a surgeon. And after 8 hours, he died. He was standing there by his bed. He felt the worst he had ever felt in his life, and suddenly he feels wonderful. And he doesn't even know he's dead. Like, he doesn't realize he's dead because he's sitting there thinking, something happened. I feel wonderful. This group of people then come into the hallway, and he can see them in the hallway, and they're calling to him, Howard, come with us. So he starts to follow these people. He starts to realize they're deceiving him. I realized that these people were my kindred spirits. I said, what do you mean? So I realized that they were like me on earth. I wasn't nice to my students. I was all about me and building my monuments to myself, my ego. I cheated on my wife a lot. It was all about me. This is really fascinating. He said in his solar plex, he said he heard, pray to God. And his first thought is, I don't believe in God.
How many accounts of hellish NDEs do you think you've had?
A lot.
Were all of them atheists?
It's a good friend of mine. He was a cocaine addict, and he has a cocaine overdose, and suddenly he's dropping. And he was like, what is happening? And he knew, I'm going to hell. And he was like, oh my gosh, I can't go to hell. I'm a good person. I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I've never murdered. And he's justifying. And he said the more he justified, the faster he felt himself dropping. Until finally he said he got to his end, and he just cried out, God save me. And he hears a voice direct to his soul, Paul, what have you done with the life I've given you?
When you interview these people and you see these commonalities, and then you see physicians and surgeons and...
This has changed a lot of people's minds. Dr. Long, like me, who studied thousands of them, he said that near-death experiences are scientific proof of a life to come.
How do you go from agnostic engineer into interviewing thousands of people who had had near-death experiences?
You know, initially I was like, well, maybe this is just hallucinating. You know, there have been a lot of alternate explanations because most of these guys are coming from what's called a materialistic point of view, right? Which says that our brain is like the computer that runs the body. There's no soul. It's just what happens in your brain. For the new book, I've interviewed 70 people personally on every continent and every religious background. 48% of people having a near-death experience encounter the same God of light and love, who is personal, who knows them intimately, whose presence they never, ever want to leave. We're in a time of choosing. What kingdom do we want to be a part of? Is it me and my kingdom and I rule? Because as it turns out, that's what hell is. Hell is the creature wanting to play God.
Before we get started, everybody gets a gift. There's a book in there that might be familiar to you.
He gave me my own book.
But
should I read it?
That's my shameless plug to plug your book in the
Okay.
show.